Welcome to my Career Book Club, where we explore real strategies for thriving in your career. My name is Julie Cullen, and in this podcast I get to indulge in two of my favourite pastimes. The first is reading books, and the second is sharing what I've learned. Each week I provide key learning points from some of my favourite career and personal development books and share them in the context of real, lived experiences combined with practical coaching tips to help you apply what you've learned. A couple of things before we get into today's episode. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the podcast every week. It means the world to me as you're helping me to achieve a dream of mine, so thank you for that. And secondly, if you enjoy these episodes, please hit the subscribe button and follow us on whichever app you're currently listening. It helps to build the visibility of this podcast on the platforms. I also invite you to get in touch with me if there are any books that you would like to hear featured on this podcast. I love a good recommendation, so just comment below or DM me on LinkedIn with your recommended reading so that I can deliver the content that you want to listen to. Thank you, and now into today's episode. The book that we are reviewing this month in my Career Book Club is The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins, who is an American speaker, author and podcast host. She first gained recognition for her TEDx talk, How to Stop Screwing Yourself Over, which went viral. And her books include The 5-Second Rule, The High Five Habit and The Let Them Theory. And she's the host of one of my favourite podcasts, the Mel Robbins podcast. I've chosen to dedicate 4 episodes to this book to cover 4 topics in particular that are specific to career-related challenges, and they are dealing with stress, worrying about other people's opinions, chronic comparison, and dealing with other people's emotional reactions. So grab a notebook, settle in, and let's learn about how the Let Them theory can help us in our careers. When I heard about the book Let Them by Mel Robbins, I considered that this could be a really powerful tool in our personal lives, but I questioned if it could really apply in the workplace. In my mind, I figured it would be a lot easier to dismiss other people with a let them in our personal relationships, but wasn't so sure that you could take the same approach at work. There's a lot more to lose in the workplace to just dismiss a difficult boss or an interfering colleague. But the more I heard Mel discuss her book, the more intrigued I became that actually it could apply at work. And as I delved deeper into the book and began to understand the theory, I realised that absolutely it would apply in the workplace. The let them theory isn't just about ignoring others or letting them get away with the unacceptable behaviour. In fact, let them is only the first part of the theory. There is a second piece where the real power lies, and we're going to explore that in this podcast. So today, we're going to do the first topic, which is all about managing stress. Now let me start by making one thing very clear. Let them is not the same as let it go, as Mel explains in the book. Letting go feels like you've lost, like you're surrendering to something that's beyond your control. And the let them is actually the opposite. It's about strength. When you say let them, you're not giving up or walking away. What you're doing is you're releasing that grip that you have on how you think things should go, and you're allowing them to unfold the way in which they're going to go. You're freeing yourself from that emotional attachment. When you choose not to let them, you're basically giving away your power. You have very little control in the way other people choose to behave or act, especially in the workplace. And obsessing over their behaviour just creates a huge burden within you of anger and irritation, frustration, stress, and so on. You're the one that's hurting by not letting them. The let them theory is about freedom, because when you stop obsessing over what other people think, say, or do, you finally have the energy to focus on your own life. You stop reacting and you start being more in control. You start being more in control of your decisions and of your actions. You're making active, empowered choices to release control over things that you truly did not have control over. You stop giving the power of your emotional state to other people. You're reclaiming the power for yourself. And then you unleash your personal power by saying the next two little but mighty words, let me. Let them releases you of the burden. Let me puts the focus on what you can control. And that's the second part of the theory. Let them, let me. True power lies in your response. A very simple example of that in action from the book is a scenario where imagine you're at work and your colleague is in a bad mood. Now, a lot of the time you could find yourself getting dragged into that situation. And all of a sudden you're in a bad mood because they're in a bad mood and it cascades. In that scenario, choose a different approach. Let them be in a bad mood. And instead of letting their negativity affect you, just say, let them. Let them be grumpy. It's not your problem. You don't need to deal with it. And then let me, you focus on you, your work, how you feel, what you want to focus on. You're not allowing their emotional state to directly impact on yours. Another example from the book that I'm sure many of us can relate to. So in this scenario, let's imagine you're in a meeting at work and you've come up with an idea that you're quite excited about. And you've put a lot of thought into it and you know it has potential. But when you pitch it in the meeting, you don't get the response that you expected. And it doesn't really get a lot of acknowledgement, maybe the odd polite nod, but the room moves on. And before you know it, someone else's idea is getting all the attention. And you feel invisible. You feel like nobody really gave you the time that was deserved after all the energy you put in. And then you often start going into this loop of second guessing yourself, wondering if it was something that you said, something that you did. Maybe you should have pitched it differently. Maybe you should have tried harder to be heard, and on and on and on it goes. All of a sudden you're beating yourself up. And in that moment, you can either let this crush you and spin around in your head for the next couple of days, or you can take a pause. Take a pause and just say, let them. Let them move on. Let them go with a different idea. Let me not take it personally. Their response doesn't change the value of your idea. It doesn't change your worth as a contributor. They might have gone with a different strategy, but that doesn't mean that yours wasn't a great idea. Okay, you're still the same person. You had a great idea, you had the confidence to pitch it. Just in that moment, that room did not go with or buy into your idea. So in that scenario, once you've chosen to not take it personally, you could try some other let me's. Let me get some feedback on my proposal. Let me understand why the other strategy was chosen. Let me understand what people were actually thinking in the room, rather than just creating this negativity in your mind, this loop that has started in your mind. Let them go with a different idea. Let me not take it personally. Let me get some feedback. Let me believe in myself and my idea. Let me understand why the other strategy was chosen. These are all actions that are in your control, that take away the emotion of your idea not being as enthusiastically received as you expected, that move you away from stressing about it and trying to second guess why your proposal wasn't chosen. And it moves you towards learning from the experience, helping you to grow and develop. When you say let them, you're recognizing what's in your control and what isn't. Instead of spiraling, you're choosing to steady yourself and detach. Let me talk about another sort of simple example that I know a lot of us experience where we actually get stressed before we even get to work. It's one that I talk about a lot, and that's the commute to work. It's a big stressor for a lot of people, and they get themselves so wound up before they even walk through the office door. And there can be so many stressors before you get to work. You might be frustrated because your child won't finish their breakfast. Angry at the idiot who cut you up on the drive in. Impatient with the barista who was taking ages to pour a simple coffee. Irritated by the noise coming from the headphones of the idiot sitting next to you on the train. All these stressors before you even get to work. You're emotionally drained, and it's not even the start of the working day yet. What happens when you apply the let them, let me theory in these situations? Let your child leave their breakfast. Let me slip a breakfast bar into their pocket for when they get hungry later. Let the idiot squeeze his car in front of you. Let me enjoy continuing to listen to my favourite tunes on the radio or the podcast episode that you're now listening to. Don't let him distract you. Let the barista take their time. Let me use the time to prepare mentally for my day. Think about what I'm going to do when I do step into the office. Let the noisy headphone guy destroy his eardrums. Let me find another quieter seat on the train. The key of the let them, let me theory is that you don't allow the actions of others to impact on your emotional health. You focus on creating a good start to your day. And once you start applying this theory, you immediately feel the benefit. The impact of not allowing other people's behaviour becomes such a huge impact on you. And honestly, when you start doing it, you will start getting gains almost instantaneously. You will start to notice the difference in how you feel instantaneously every single day. And as you develop using this theory, it just compounds. Now, in the book, Mel advises us that as soon as something happens that stresses you out, you should say let them. Straight away, put yourself into a short pause. Then say let them again. Pause, take a breath. Then say let me. Pause again. Let me. Use this process to calm yourself down. Calm your body down, calm your brain down. And when you do this, you'll start to see that a lot of the things that you react to normally are really not worth your time and energy. They're sapping and draining and stressing you when they really don't have to. And you can walk into work feeling calm and ready to start the day. But what about once you're in work? Let's take an example of how we take the next step in de-stressing your day once you're actually in the office or wherever your workspace is. This might be a good point to stop and consider what are the stressors that you typically experience in work, because there will be ones that repeat on a regular basis, and they're really the ones that you want to target on first and foremost. They're the ones that you want to get really stuck into with this process and take that stress out of that part of the day. So some typical things that certainly a few of these come in the book, certainly a few of them are my personal ones. So you've got that aggressive email that's sitting in your inbox, or that 4:00 meeting on a Friday afternoon. Who on earth does that when all you want to do is get out of the office? The boss who's never off your back, the customer who persistently demands your attention, that feeling of being overworked and undervalued, or that never-ending to-do list that just seems to keep on growing. There are a few that you probably definitely will have related to one or two of them. You'll have more of your own. Target the low-hanging fruit. Target which are the ones that happen regularly to you that really you want to take that stress out of your day. Okay? There's a whole laundry list there. You get the picture. Maybe even you'll find it helpful to start writing it down at the moment. And when you identify one in work, add it to the list. And then choose the one or two that you want to work on in the beginning. Do you know, there is so much stress being spoken about in our daily lives. And too often we watch as burnt out colleagues can no longer take it and they end up on long-term sick leave. Right? You don't want to be that person. It's surprising some of the people that end up in that state. Don't let it be you. So, and this can be really hard because especially if you feel like you really need this job, you're under stress at home as well. So I want you to think about applying these both personally and professionally. So it actually can be a stressor itself. If you really need this job, you need the income, you can't afford to lose it. So you start piling on even more stress while continuing to feel overburdened and unfulfilled. It's time to take back control. So pick all the low-hanging fruit first. What are the things that you can chip away at and apply the let them, let me theory to take that piece of stress out of the picture? You really can't afford to continue like this. And if at the moment you're letting them, without doing the let me, you're applying one half of the theory and it's really not working. You need to start taking control. It's not just about letting them, it's about what you're going to do in return. And there's two aspects to this in my mind. There's the situation in which you actually do want to continue working where you are. It's just that you want to feel less stressed. And then there's the other situation in which no matter what you do, you really need out. And you need to identify what is the right solution for you. Okay, so let's take a look at the situation where you don't want to leave your workplace. You actually reasonably enjoy the work. You just want it to be less stressful. And one of those that we mentioned earlier is the idea of the aggressive email or the aggressive individual. It doesn't even need to be an email. The aggressor. And in actual fact, in a couple of weeks' time, we're actually going to be talking specifically about aggressive individuals. But let's just focus at the moment about the stress that this causes. And an aggressive email or an aggressive attitude in the workplace is very unprofessional. And it says a lot more about the person who's doing the aggressing. And your job is not to give them the power of letting their words stress you. Even if they're from a boss or higher up, a senior position is no excuse for unprofessional behaviour. I remember being in a really difficult situation in one of my jobs where I was working with a senior manager who became very passive-aggressive towards me, to the point that he actually just stopped speaking to me, which was really difficult when we have to work together. In fact, in one particular meeting, when I walked in and sat down, he actually purposely turned his chair away from me so that he had his back to me. The whole room saw it. A few of them were flabbergasted and couldn't wait to quiz me when we left the meeting to find out what on earth was going on. There was a time when that kind of behaviour would have strung me out. I would have really been frantic about it and gotten so upset and worried about what I had done to deserve that behaviour, what I needed to do to fix the situation. It really would have ground me down in earlier in my career. I really would have struggled with that. But thankfully, when this did happen, I had learned not to allow his unprofessionalism to become my problem. And in fact, what I had unknowingly done was applied the let them theory. I let him be an obnoxious twat because that was what he was. And I focused on doing a great job. I had the support of the people around me who also recognised that he was the one that was being unprofessional. He was the one that had the issue. And in the beginning, I'll not deny, it did feel stressful. We were supposed to be working as a partnership, and that just wasn't happening. But I needed to let go. I needed to let him be who he was, and I needed to let me find a way of dealing with it. And the way I did that was I leaned on the people who did value me. Okay? I let them be an obnoxious, unprofessional idiot. I let me not allow this person to stress me out. And I focused on doing a great job and surrounding myself with the people who appreciated my value. So if you're experiencing aggressive emails or behaviour from an individual in the workplace, you can't change who they are. You need to rise above it. You need to let them. If your boss has been a jerk, let them. In the book, Mel says you should rise above it. And in fact, she even says you should feel a little bit entitled to be just a bit judgy. If they're the ones being an arse, you're the better person. Allow yourself to be a little bit judgy. Don't allow their rudeness to derail your day. So rise above it, and then it's let me. Let me. Your power is in not trying to manage their attitude. Let me. You're going to let them be a jerk. You're not going to let it affect you. Let me. Take responsibility of how you're going to respond to this. And there are many options you can choose. Now, if it's your boss, as you say, one of the things I thought about was moving to another team. That's something you could choose to do. Is there an internal opportunity to move to another team? Do you want to move externally? Leave the company? Your career is in your hands. You can do whatever you want. Or if you want to deal with it, you can choose to have a conversation with the boss about their behaviour to see if that does have an impact, to see if you can resolve the issue in a professional way. Or you can choose to report them if it warrants that type of response. Maybe it's a conversation with HR. Whatever it is that you decide to do, you do it in a calm, considered, deliberate way. Allowing yourself to become emotionally stressed by the situation does not help you. And it gives away your power to the other person. To apply the theory, let them be the unprofessional, obnoxious idiot. Then you say to yourself, let me, and let me determine how I plan to deal with this. The let them theory really highlights this and empowers you to make better choices about what is worth your time and energy and what isn't. And a boss that's not giving you the respect that you deserve maybe does warrant some of your time and energy, but in a way that you're in control. Because this isn't about avoiding difficult conversations or staying silent. It also doesn't mean being a doormat and letting other people walk over you. And it also doesn't mean that you have to pick up everybody else's crap. What it does mean is that you get to choose what impacts you and to what extent. You get to choose what you participate in and what you don't. You get to choose when a job or a relationship or an issue is worth fighting for and when it's time not to. You get to choose, and that is why you are always in control of what happens next. So pick one of the stressors that you identified earlier on, that you're experiencing at work, and try the experiment. Let them, let me. And see how you got on with that. In fact, I would love to know how you got on with that. If you would like to let me know, feel free to DM me on LinkedIn or send me an email. I always love to hear from you. I love hearing what you think about the podcast. I love hearing what you think about the topics. I love hearing how you've applied what you've learned and what the impact has been. So please feel free to let me know if you have applied the let them, let me theory to any stressors in your workplace or in your personal life and how that worked out for you. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Career Book Club. If the episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend or colleague who you think needs to hear it. In the next episode, we are going to continue our analysis of the let them theory and focus in on how to deal with your fear of other people's opinions. Make sure you don't miss it by subscribing to this podcast to follow me for more real strategies to create a career you love. And remember, if you have a book recommendation that you'd like to be featured on this podcast, please get in touch. My details will be in the show notes below. Bye for now.